Land and block Gemara. We are up to the Ches Amud Aleph. This is the Gemara for Monday. The Gemara is about 20 lines on the top of the page. We're continuing to discuss the argument between Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef. And we have two versions as to their argument as to whether you have to have Shumah, whether you have to assess it beforehand. Rabbi says you don't have to. Rabbi Yosef says that you do have to. And we had, according to the second version of the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef says that even in a case where I did not give you a value and I said whatever it is worth, nevertheless it has to be assessed because we have to treat it like money. And money, we know exactly what it's worth. So to any shavakes we use, we have to know exactly what it's worth. In the first version, it's basically talking about a case where I gave a value, and the question is whether the woman, the wife, or the kala will believe you or rely on it or not. Rabbi said you don't need to, in a case where it turned out to be the value was correct, so you didn't have to assess it. And Rabbi said still it has to be assessed because maybe she didn't really rely on it totally. Says about it further, Rabbi Yosef, the first word line is Rabbi Yosef said, no, I'll bring another proof. The Tanya will the Braisa, Egel ze lepidyon beni. This you have to give 5 sloyim to be paid to your firstborn. So I'm giving this calf to a kohen to redeem the firstborn, or or this particular garment I'm using to redeem my son. It does not work. You didn't give the actual 5 shloim. That's the ratio. The Sefer says, however you spell it out, this egel with the value of 5 shloim should be the pidyon of my son, or then the son is redeemed. And you have to ask yourself, what's going on here? Why is the ratio different than the Sefer? What are we talking about? Ilema the loy shavi is not worth the 5 shloim, and that's then kol kamine. That's because he spelled it out now. So the ratio, because he didn't spell it out, it's not padu. The Sefer, because he spelled it out, it's worth 5 shloim. If in fact it isn't, it's still value. It doesn't make sense. Is he believed? The was talking about both cases is that it's for 5 shloim and it's taka worth 5 shloim. So how come in the Sefer in the ratio doesn't work? Because in the ratio they didn't assess it. So the Sefer is talking about they assessed it and they evaluated it, and therefore taka works. But the ratio they didn't evaluate, that's why it doesn't work. So there's a proof to me. What's Rabbi going to deal with this price? How is Rabbi going to deal with this price? Says you want to know, you don't have to assess it. It's talking about a case where you said it was worth 5 and it's not worth 5. So therefore the ratio doesn't work. So how come in the Sefer it does? Going to Kabul Koyin Olai. The Koyin accepted that it should work. The Koyin said, you know what, I'll accept it as 5 shloim. And how do you know that it works? How it works? In the case of Kana, Shakil Sudre Mibei Pidyon Aben. He once took a sudra, took a handkerchief, a kerchief for a Pidyon Aben, and on Malay, and he said, Lididi Chazali Chamesh Shloim. For me, it's worth 5 shloim. So we see that that even though it wasn't worth 5 shloim, he could say, for me, it is worth 5 shloim. So that Asia is talking about that Taka wasn't worth 5 shloim. That's why it wasn't padi, but you don't have to normally assess it. And the Sefer is talking about that it wasn't, but because the Koyin said, the Dishavi, it's good enough. Omar Ravashi says, Loy Omar, when did you say that you can say the Dishavi? El Kigoyin of Kahana the Gavra Rabahu. Only someone like Kahana was a great man. Umeboyle Sudra Aresha, and he needs to have a sudra on his head. He needs a kerchief. So if it's something that you really need, then it has no value. And if he says to me it's worth 5, it's fine. Abu Kuliyam, but everybody else not. Now, what exactly means by Kuliyam? The big machlekes are shiny. Does it mean other kohanim can't? Only that will, and why only Rabkana? And why? Because he is a Talmud Chacham and he needs to wear the special hat of sudra, which is Seid Hashem L'Reya. A Talmid Chacham wear. Abu Kuliyam, everybody else not. Or we're talking about only not a coin versus a coin, but versus this kind of an object, which is really essential, versus other objects which are not so essential. And you cannot say the dishavili. When can you say dishavili? Only something like a suda, which is really important. And the Ran has a whole chakira. What about, this is an argument that what we just said in the Rambam. What about in a case where it's not worth a pruta, but the person says to me it's worth a pruta? Can you create something from nothing? In other words, over here, maybe it has value, but doesn't have the value of 5 shloim. So I can say to me, it is worth 5 shloim. But if something has no value, it's less than a pruta, to say to me it's worth more than a pruta, maybe you cannot do that, or maybe there's no difference. As a digression, a few digressions. A very important machlekes, sort of about the Gemara, but very little said about this on this Gemara here, is Rashi says over here that why was it so important that Rav Kahana, says Rashi, because he needed the sudra, otherwise he would be Gili Rosh. What do you mean Gili Rosh? Which if you take it literally means that he didn't have a head covered, didn't have his yarmulke on, and what do you call it? And therefore for him it was very important. And as he says here, and Rashi says the Gabra Rabbahu is a very important person. The loy ozil begili harash, it doesn't go with the revealed head. If you take Rashi literally, it sounds like that you don't have to wear yarmulke, a head cover. Only Rav Kahana, because the chashvu person, he had to wear a head cover. The Magen Avraham Simon Ches learns from here that when you wear a talus, you don't have to cover your head. However, Rav Kahana is a Talmud Chacham. We had an Arab Psachim in other places. Talmud Chacham used to wear a head cover called a sudra, which is Seid Hashem L'Reil. There's a fascinating Bach in Simon Menvav in Chorah Chaim, and there's a Bes Yosef, and basically the question is as follows: we say in the morning a bracha, Oited Yisrael b'Sifara. You crown our heads b'Sifara with splendor, and that's talking about a head covering. Now, if it's talking about a yarmulke, then how did you make all the brachas till then? Because as the Gemara bracha says, and the Rambam says, it's all done chronologically, the order of events as it happens. Oita Yisrael b'Sifara on the last brachas. How in the world did you make brachas and Simon Tzadik and Shulchan and Tzadik Alpha said you're not allowed to make a bracha without a head cover? So how did you make all the brachas till now? So the Beis Yosef and Bach both learn we're not talking about a head cover. We're actually talking about a hat. That you have to wear a hat, and the bracha Oita Yisrael b'Sifara is discussing a hat that you wear during davening. A yarmulke you have to always wear, and the Talmidei Chacham who wore a special head cover was a hat, and yet even that is considered an essential item. It's important. We also have this by the 10 things you need for a cup. So we have an interesting machlekes because the Vilna Gaon and Simcha Chesed actually learned that you don't have to wear yarmulke. The Tzemach Tzedek there in Shalos Jews and the Muluyim says, and the Chaim and Piskei says clearly I have to wear yarmulke, perhaps even Ma'atayda. Apart from the Taz and all these, and the Marshal and Simonai and all these other opinions there. But interesting, Rashi says Gilui Rosh, and what does Gilui Rosh mean? That if you learn Magen Avraham is literally Gilui Rosh, you learn that Bach Bes Yosef not wearing a hat is also called Gilui HaRosh. Another interesting thing is that Taisus wants to know Rav Kahana. We had in Psachim that Rav Kahana actually was a Yisrael. So the Taisus here says, but we already had, and it's obvious from all the Gemaras that we learned that there were more than one Rav Kahana, at least two, if not more. One we had talking to Rav Ashi, and one we had talking to Rabbi Yechanan, and was a student of Rab who ran to Yisrael, and we'll learn the end of Masechet Bava Kama all about him. So there were two Rav Kahanas. But what Taisus brings up here is a fascinating thing, and it's a big machlek is a shame. Taisus said if Rav Kahana was Yisrael, and we're not talking about the other Kahana, but the first Rav Kahana, how did he take Pidyon Haben? So Taisus makes a big chiddush here, that when it comes to Pidyon Haben, or Kohenes can take the 5 slayim just like a Kohen. It's not the exclusive domain of the male Kohenim. A female Kohen can also do it. And Rav Kahana took it on behalf of his wife. Other Rishonim totally disagree and say that just like all the other matnas kuna has to go to a Kohen, a male, and then they can share it with their wife. But it goes to male, same thing over here as well. Okay, further Gemara says the Gemara to prove this point. He heard the Mar Rav Ashi, Zovan Sudre Me'ima de Rabba. Mar Rav Ashi bought a kerchief from the mother of Rabba, and from Kubi, the town of Kubi, Shavi Asada Betleisa. It was worth $10 and paid 13. So the Rambam actually, but why? Because to him it was worth that much. The Rambam actually learns that from here that this is actually dealing with the laws of Ayno. You cannot do more than a sixth, but if you're Meichel, you say to me it's worth, you can. It's impossible that Mar Rav Ashi bought a kerchief from the mother of Rabba. Mar Rav Ashi was the next generation of Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi was born when the Rabba passed. Rav Ashi was born when the Rabba passed away, and Rabba was Rabba's teacher. So it's possible Mar Rav Ashi went back 4 generations to the mother of Rabba. So you're going another generation. Others want to change Rabba to Rabba, but even that, Very difficult to imagine a Mar Barav Ashi was bought a kerchief from the mother of Rabbi. Should be 3 generations apart, but maybe. Taking about it further, Amar Abelazar said, a new din. He's catching even money. If a man says to a woman, "You Mekudesh me with $100, $100." But Nasla Din, he only gave her a dinner. Harei Zuma Kadeshes. She is engaged, the Yashlim, but he owes her the $99. So the first dinner he gave is considered a down payment, and the rest he owes. My time, why? Kivan the Amalamana, because he said $100. The Yav la dinner and gave her one dinner. Command the Amalamanastam, as if to say, as if it's a condition. And we had a number of times, as if to say from now. In other words, some say the pshat here is that she's mekudah straight away. The balance of $99 is like any other condition. Well, if it's like any other condition, she's bound by it, but he can change his mind and not give them the rest of the money, and the Kiddushin dissolves. Others say no, the Kiddushin is straight away, and whether he gives the rest of the money or not doesn't matter. The Kiddushin is straight away. The rest is not a tonight. He has an obligation to pay, and she can take it to the Torah. But the Kiddushin is 100%. Machlek is how long of a time do you wait for it tonight? According to some of the Shayim, it's 30 days, but the other Shayim is 12 months. Makes us a question. His actually, but if a person says you mekudesh me for $100, why you might never and you started counting the $100, the rotze man laughs. If either one wants to change their mind, I feel a bit in an even for the very last dinner, they can both change their minds. You just said if he said the Kiddushin took place right away. Here it says clearly Kiddushin does not take effect until the very end. So we're making a distinction between mana stam and mana zu. If he says I'm going to give you $800, then Kiddush, and I owe you the balance. But if he says mana zu this $100, then it's not Kiddush till the entire $100 is paid up. So the Sefer the mana zu can't be, because since the next part of the Braisa, which we'll discuss in a minute, it clearly talks about a case of mana zu. Reisha, it must be talking about mana stam. Otherwise, why repeat itself? And not only why repeat itself, if you can tell me mana stam minama kuddush till the very end, then surely the mana zu surely never kuddush to the very end. So obviously, so right now the Gemara is saying, sorry. Right now, if the Sefer is talking about Manas Zu and the Sefer is talking about Manas Tam, and still I'm a good till the very end. Kash Rabbalazar, what's the story? Katani says in the Sefer, Amalai is actually Manas Zu. You could me with this $100. And into Manachas dinner turns out to be it was only 99 there dinner from the Chayshes, or a copper dinner, which means it's useless. Ain't Mikadeshes. So it says clearly here, this is a case of Manas Zu, which means the race from Manas Tam. And Manas Tam, I'm a good to the end. If there was a coin there, but it's bad, it's the Yachlish and Mekudesh, and the Yachlish is changing. Machlek is changing if she's Mekudesh even before she changes it, or she's not Mekudesh until after she changes it. So the Gemara no, Kasha. I can argue that the Reisha the Sefer the Amab Manazu. No, in the case of Manastam, Rabbi Lazar is right. She's Mekudesh straight away. He owes her the balance. And in the Sefer we're talking about Manazu. Sorry, and what about this Braisa? This Braisa, the entire Braisa is talking about Manazu. If the entire Braisa is talking about Manazu, and that's why you were counting till the very end to that Mekudesh then, so why do you repeat itself twice? The Braisa is explaining itself. If they want to change their mind, if they can't. What are we talking about? When is that talking about? If he said the manazu, so the Sefer is explaining the Reisha that we're only limited. This din is limited only to manazu. To the end, to the very end. It makes sense. But these are the Reisha the manastam. If you can tell me the Reisha the manastam, and she's not mekudesh to the very last coin, you need to tell me that manazu, this pile over here, is $100. She's not mekudesh if there's not $100. Of course, it's obvious. But you have to tell me. Says the Gemara, that's your whole basis to tell me. I mean, could be you're right that you're talking about here, that the whole thing is about mana zu, but your proof is not compelling. Because Tana say for the duration, maybe the price is coming to tell you that and we're talking about monazu and monastam. Why do you need both cases? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the Mishnah only had the Braisa only had one case, I would automatically assume we're talking about monazu. By telling us both cases, and one of them is monazu, then I know that the other case is monastam. And the Braisa says, argue with Rabbi Lazar and says that what? That even monastam, you're not mekudesh till the very end. Tana Sefer Shlatayma Reisha Manazu and Monastam have a Kiddushin. Tana Sefer Manazu, that's why the end is from Manazu, Mikal the Reisha and Monastam. Bafilahachi lo yahavi Kiddushin. The Braisa is on Rabbi Lazar. However, Rav Ashi comes along and says, I'll tell you, don't. Let's say the Braisa is talking about Monastam. Yet Rabbi Lazar and the Braisa are two different cases. There's not arguing. Rabbi Lazar says if you say Monastam, she's Mekudesh straight away, you owe the $99. And and the Braisa says Monastam, you're not Mekudesh till the very end. What's going on here? Rav Ashi, there's another difference here. Because Hamayna B'Hailech is sitting there, and because she's sitting there, she's counting the money. Or they're both sitting there and they're counting the money. What does that prove? That proves they're not happy to be. She's not happy to be mekudesh until she counts the full money. That's why you're not mekudesh. But in a normal case, gives her $1 and she doesn't say anything. She's mekudesh. Shani daita kula. Since over here, mayne b'hoylech shani is different because the data akula. She intends to receive the entire money. Maybe she's embarrassed to ask if she'll receive the entire money, so she wants to see the entire money is here, and that's why it's very, very different. If in the case of Manazu also, it's only talking about a case where they were counting, whatever you weren't counting, and she's prepared. You say Manazu's tile, she's not even interested in counting, and she's accepting whatever it is, even if it's less than the full amount. Because there's actually another Gemara we'll learn later about if you said $100, only $99 are there. So maybe if you didn't count, or even if you didn't count, when it comes to Manazu, you expect to see the entire $100 there. Second, what do you mean a copper coin? If she knew it was copper and she accepted it, her copper, she accepts it. Gave it to her at night. There's a very interesting machlekes Rishonim. It says that by gittin you shouldn't give a get by night. And since we are comparing the Yotzav we're comparing Kiddushin to Gittin, then there's one of the Rishonim, I forgot who it is already, says clearly that you cannot do Kiddushin at night. So some want to learn Pshat only when it comes to a star, because that's what we're comparing to a get. So a star you should not write at night. Well, we don't do stars today. We have a chuppah with Kiddush with money. But others say that all Havoyas are compared to each other. You can never have a chuppah at night. And all chuppahs must be done during the day because we compare to star, and star is compared to Gittin, and Gittin at night. So they ask a question right here. It says clearly here that you gave money at night. So it shows you could have a chuppah at night. So they try to deal with this Gemara here. Some want to make a distinction between, let's say, giving a ring and giving a star. A ring can be at night. It's only a star that cannot be at night. Others say, well, it doesn't mean night. It means dark, but it's definitely during the day here. According to those who hold, you cannot have a chuppah at night. You know, maybe the was stuck between the money, you didn't see it. So you're hiding the reich, tell me a bad coin, you said you can still a valid kedusha. What are we talking about? Either learn off the kind of if it's useless, then that's a copper coin. It can be used, but it's difficult to find people who will actually accept this as currency. Amar Rabbi Nachman says, Rabbi Nachman, Amar, he says to her, he's catching Libamana, you're Makudish to me with $100. Then he placed a mashkin on it. He said to her, look, I'm going to give you $100. I'm owing you $100. And then he didn't give her any money, but instead he gave her a mashkin, gave her a security. So the din is Ein Mekadeshes. Why not? Because Mana ain't kan, mashkin ain't kan. Big machlek Hashem how to learn pshat here. About 5 or 6 different ways of learning. But Rashi, whatever, learns that money ain't kan. The $100, and then Rashi itself is big machlek how to understand. But simple pshat is he didn't give any money right now, and therefore, so what's he mekadosh with the mashkin? But that's the only tangible thing he gave her. But the mashkin really does not belong to her. She has to give it back to him. So what's with the mekadosh? Nothing. Others say that he doesn't even owe her the money, because he's just indebting himself. There's nothing there. There's no commitment, and the mashkin is not a way of committing yourself to give money, and therefore, so why doesn't the mashkin work as a guarantor? I'm giving you a guarantee, like any other guarantor. The guarantor doesn't receive the money, yet he owes. He still owes it in case the borrower just had the money to pay back. So we're saying over here is that when can you be a guarantor if a loan took place? There's a labor, then the guarantee kicks in. But since over here there's no loan because no money changed hands, just an indebtedness which is meaningless. Therefore, the mashkin is not an audit either, not a guarantor either. My question is clearly kitchen a mashkin mekadesh. It says clearly if a woman received a mashkin as kiddushin, she is engaged. She becomes engaged betrothed to him. So we see that you could with a mashkin. See, what do you compare? Hasam the mashkin that they're talking about somebody else owes this man money, and they gave that, and this man received security in lieu, and he turns around and takes that security where there is an actual debt attached to it, and gives it to her and says, "You mekudesh with this mashkin." That is effective. But in this case, there's no loan. He's saying to her, "I'm going to owe you $100. I'm going to give you $100. Meanwhile, here's security for that." And therefore, there's nothing here. Now, why is it if somebody gives you a mashkin and security for payment, do we say that this person, this lender now has certain ownership in it, and he can actually use it to engage a woman? What Rabbi said, it says that if you give back at night the blanket to this poor person, this borrower, it'll be considered tzedakah for you. Now, if you tell me that the lender has no rights to this mashkin, so tzedakah, where does tzedakah come in? You see that Baal Chayv is kind of mashkin. So the big machlekes are showing him when there's two kinds of mashkin. There's a mashkin shaloi b'shas avos, which means they come the due date, and the guy doesn't have what to pay, so I take security. So then Rabbi Yitzchak says clearly that is a form of payment. It says if you paid me, but you have the right to take it back when you give me the cash. So then Rabbi Yitzchak says that this person that owns the mashkin. Here we're talking about a case shaloi b'shas avos. We're talking about the due date hasn't arrived yet. The mashkin was given together with the loan. So it's a lesser degree. So therefore, let's say the mashkin is completely the person's, it's completely his. Here, it's not completely mine. I'm only like the patient holder, Shem Sachar. I'm chayiv, obligated for Geneva, the strong get lost. I'm not responsible for Einzin, Rashi Ojibar, because it's a step lower. Others actually learned that this is talking about a mashkin that was given Shalei B'Shas Avasi, not B'Shas Avasi. Anyway, bottom line is that here the mashkin has a different kind of a mashkin came with a loan, and therefore the person has rights to it, and that's what he passes on to her. Either he gives the mashkin or the shibud of the loan. Different opinions are learning. What's fascinating here is the Taisus, and this is a question that always bothered me, and I can see here that Taisus, two answers to Taisus would deal with this very question. The question is as follows: if somebody, this shayla came up many years ago. If somebody, let's say, a mashula comes to you and asks you for tzedakah for themselves or for an institution, you give them $1,000 check and they give you back $900 cash. So technically you gave them $100 cash. You gave them $100 tzedakah, but in the end, the person, the donor, actually made money on it, because if he wouldn't have done that, he would have to pay taxes on $1,000. Let's say it's 40%. He would have lost $400, but because he gave it to a charity, he only ended up giving $100. He got back $300. He got back full $900. So in fact, he made money on this deal. Is that tzedakah or not? Then the question is as follows: is tzedakah the main primary objective tzedakah that the poor person should receive, or the primary thing that you have to give? It has to cost you. If the poor person should receive, they received $100. What's the difference how I did it? But if the main thing is that that tzedakah is that it has to cost you, then in this case there's no tzedakah. That's the question. So we bring a proof from a famous case. If you lost money and somebody else finds it, you fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah. So that proves as long as you lost, therefore the tzedakah. But that doesn't really prove that, because the fact is the poor person received it. Maybe that's why it's called tzedakah. So Taisus asks, so which way is it? So Taisus asks an interesting question, and based on Taisus' two answers, it's clear that this is the argument, and I haven't seen anybody quote this Taisus, but that's what it would seem. Taisus has a question. Your whole proof that it's considered that you have rights over the mashkin is because when I return to the poor person, we call it tzedakah. If it didn't belong to me, then there's no tzedakah. I'm giving back the person their item. So Taisus has a question. It's still tzedakah. I don't have to. I'm giving every night. I'm going to your house. I'm giving you a blanket. I don't have to give it. Right now, I have the rights to the blanket because of mashkin, and I'm giving it back to you. Isn't that tzedakah? That's what Taisus' question is. So Taisus gives two answers. The second answer to Taisus is that no. The second answer to Taisus is tzedakah b'nai. Taisus' answer is it's not called tzedakah if it's not mine. If it's not mine, it's not called tzedakah. In other words, Even though I'm doing a good thing, I'm giving you something back. I'm giving you something of yours, but because it's not mine, it costs me nothing. That isn't tzedakah. The other answer is no. Even if it's not yours, you is doing tzedakah. But you know why in this case he can't do it? Because every time you give it back to that person benches you. So it comes out that I'm getting ribis for the loan. Not only will I get eventually paid back for my loan, I'm getting all these brachas. That's ribis. And that's the problem. But if it's mine, then the thank you he's giving me is not for the loan that I gave him. He's giving me thank you for the mashkin that I'm giving him, mine, because I own it now, and I'm bringing it back to him every night. For that, he's thanking me. That's not called ribis. In other words, what's the answer? First answer in places that you are mekayim, the mitzvah of tzedakah, even if it's not mine. Clear. That's the argument. If I'm giving you something that isn't that, but it doesn't cost me anything, am I doing the mitzvah of tzedakah? And therefore, the same question comes up, like the Mishnah Melech asked about Kiddushin. We spoke a few days ago. If you give something which is, let's say, basa b'chol, which is asa b'hana, to a poor person who is sick, have I fulfilled the mitzvah tzedakah? But it cost me nothing. It's not even mine. But you received something. That's the machlek of the two answers in Taisus, which is interesting. Also interesting is about ribis. The first answer Taisus says that's called ribis, saying thank you. You did the mitzvah that you're giving me. And the second answer says not. And the argument is, if you're giving me ashikayach for doing a mitzvah, is that also called ribus dvarim? According to one answer, it says yes, that's ribus dvarim. When is it? When the Mishnah says the end of Ezer Neshach, but you know, I'll say thank you is if he says thank you for doing the mitzvah, that is ribus dvarim. But if you're just being a mensch saying thank you, maybe you're allowed to. And the second answer, and that's how from Zamrodach Paskas, you're allowed to. The second answer of Taisus is no, that saying thank you for doing a mitzvah is not ribus. When is the ribus if you say thank you for being a mensch? That is ribus dvarim. Anyway, let's continue the Gemara. Says the Gemara, 6 lines at the top of the page. Bnei Rav Hula bar Rabbi Zovan, they once bought a maid with for a few coins, but they didn't have any money with that. Oh, you see, the Naschal, they gave a mashkin a piece of silver. Because prutas they gave silver. So the maid became more expensive when they came to pay the full money. And the question is, who owned the maid? Also, when you gave the prita, you didn't give it as a down payment, you just gave it security. So you paid nothing for them. So therefore, you didn't pay anything, and the mashkin didn't become theirs. So you did nothing, and the value now is increased. You want to buy it, you have to pay the extra money. So I learned. He's catching the money. The man says to the woman, "You Kiddushin me with $100." Then the Tolta, she took it, was a Raktiliam. She threw it into the sea, or into a fire. Or something, anything perishable, she's not engaged. Why? Because it shows that she's not interested in getting married. Seems from here, if you threw right in front of him, threw right back in his face, have a Kiddushin. It will be Kiddushin. That doesn't make sense. She's saying clearly, I don't want it. That's obvious. She didn't come in through for him. If she threw it in the border of the ocean, now what happens? She has to reimburse him because she just ruined it. So therefore, we'll say, look, cost of money. Probably she accepted Kiddushin. Why did she throw it in? If she wants to be Kiddushin, why did she throw it away? To test to see if he has anger. That no, we say she's not Kiddushin. Abba's question is, what's the point of testing his anger if she accepted the Kiddushin? It's too late already. She's married to him. So maybe that's exactly like a condition. She wanted to say, if he gets angry, I'm not going to be interested in marrying him. But if she doesn't get angry, I'll marry him. That's what we thought. That no. So total rejection. Total Rabbi learned. He's actually modest. He said to you, "Mekudesh me with $100." There's a big machlekes are shining, by the way, in the previous case when she tossed it into the fire or into the river, that she had to do straight away. What about she did 5 minutes later? Maybe because then we have a suffix Kiddushin because maybe she's Mekudesh and she changed her mind. Or, and we know by Kiddushin is the only thing you cannot, in Kiddushin Gittin, you cannot change your mind. You cannot change your mind, even Terch Kedibur. So there's a whole discussion how quickly she had to throw it into the river. Then one further, I learned. He says to her, "You Kiddushin me for $100," and she says, "Give it to my father, give it to your father." No, she said, "Give it away. I'm not interested." If she says, "I'm a nashi kabul li," she says, "Give it to my father, your father, on condition they accept it on my behalf." Mekudeshes. Machlekes are showing him, and Rashi says something like, she said, "I want that to be shliach kabbalah." Can she appoint through a shliach another person to be her shliach kabbalah to represent her? And as soon as they receive it, she's in divorced, or not shliach kabbalah, just generally. So why do we need to learn Abba and Avicha? It's the same principle. Tana, we learn Abba, my father. You know, she said my father. She's still not interested in getting married, even though he's given a gift to her father. And Tana Avicha, his father, the Acha said he's Kayla Sefer. What? He's catching. He's Kayla Sefer. What? That even though your father's a stranger to me, I'm happy if he accepts to be my shliach. He's catching b'mana. He says to her, and she said, "If I give the total stranger, ain't a mekadesh. I'm an ashikalim mekadesh. The same difference. That he accepts to be mashlich. Yes, we need all three cases to be answered. The Ashmin Abba, we explain why you need both. But it said those two Hassan who the Chiyamra Manashi Kabli only over there. She said, I want them to represent me of a Kiddushin because she knows them. The Samcha died to lie, she relies on them. Savra of the Sukhasayda fulfill my request. Abba playing a stranger, why would it do it? Look, she never lied, I just said it. She meant I'm rejecting you. The Ashmin Pliny Hachad the Chiyamra only here. She says, give it to that person, no Kiddushin, just give a person, you say clearly, I don't want it. Why should she give a gift to a total stranger? Give him matana. She says, give it to my father, to your father. The mikvah she's close to them. We need both. So I learned. He's actually the money. $100, and she says, "No, Agabi, place it on this stone." Aina mikudesh. She is not mikudesh. She's not mikudesh. But the im hoya selah shalab, and if it was her stone, then she is mukudeshes. Why? Because she's, as Rashi says, she's koydi. She's mekadesh because of the chatzas, like her stone. Everything on it, she's koydi. Boy, the bibi. What about Salah Shashnei? Mao, the stone belongs to both of them. Take good question. Take says, understand. If it's talking about a chatzah, we learned already. The chatzah belongs to both. You're not koydi. Neither of them could be koydi on their own. So therefore, what's the shaila here? What exactly is the shaila? So therefore, Taisus learns totally differently. Taisus learns the. The question is whether she relies that it should be mekudesh. It's not kinyan chatz at all. That it's nothing to do with kinyan. It has to do with does she rely on this as if she's saying, "Oh, I really want to be mekudesh," and that's why if the stone is hers, it sounds like she's saying, "Yes, I do really." We know that she accepts. If the stone is not hers, as if she's saying, "I'm not interested." The question is amongst both. What is she saying? Is she saying I'm interested, or is she saying I'm not interested? The Rosh writes. But how is she mekudesh? If it lands on a stone that is not if it's not a kinyan chutz or anything else, how is she mekudesh? So he adds one more word, and you threw the money. She says, put it on the stone, but he threw it into her pocket. So she's mekudesh into her pocket. The question is only what his intention, her intention was. Was she agreeing to get married or not? So therefore, we make a distinction. Selah shlo, somebody else. Says about it further. Boy, Mori, the dog was chasing after her. Sorry, skip the line. He's got to be kika yumukudish me with a loaf of bread. She says, give it to a dog. Ain't a mekadesh. No, but she's rejecting it. But he might tell her her dog mekadesh because then obviously she's taking it. Boy, a dog was chasing after her, threatening to bite her mouth. Who another komatz nafshimine gom mekanya nafsh? Do we say? If he then goes ahead and tosses the bread to the dog and distracts the dog, so that pleasure that she received, she's happy to be married to him. She received something. Ideal, she can say to him, "But you have to save me." So therefore, I have nothing from this. Take. What about his kachli b'kika? He says to her, "You mekudesh me with a piece of bread," and she says, "Truloni, give it to a poor person." Ain't mekudesh. I feel on some even a poor person that generally relies on, she's not mekudesh. Why? My time, he gave the bread to the poor person because of what she said. She said, I'm a to give the poor person, so are you. And the Shemir in the Pasuk they talk about, are you mechuyev to give money to every poor person? So because she wants to give money to that poor person, I have a chiyuv of giving ma'aser. Maybe I can give to other institutions, to other poor people. Who's that mechuyev to give to this poor person? Interesting discussion. Every poor person that you see that you have to give tzedakah to, or you have a chiyuv giving a minimum of 10%, but you can decide who to give the tzedakah to. And it seems from here, from the Gemara here, that she says to him, "You're mechuyev to give just like I am," which sounds like if there's a poor person there, everyone has a chiyuv to give. Says about further, who gave is a person that become masbi in a chumre person was selling, as Rashi says, buttons made out of tin or buttons made out of glass. Also, he said, "Woman came along, beautiful jewelry. Give me one string. I want to make a necklace Amala I Avin Love Kadeshli. If I give it to you, will you be Kurdish to me? Amala, she said, Hava Mev, give. Amar Rab Chama called Hava Mev Lam Klume, which she says, give, it doesn't mean anything. If she says give and I'll be Makudish to you, is it the same thing or that's very different? Because she added the words I'll be Makudish. Brother Muhammad saying she just wants the necklace, so she just said whatever he wants to hear. She didn't mean it. Similar story. Who got the person that goes drinking wine, the chanas in the store. Also, he eats a woman came along. I don't know. She said, "Havli chat kosa, give me a cup of wine. Looks so nice." I'm like, if I give you, people get married to me. Give. Give me the drink, give me a drink. Your drink means nothing. Who got the person that goes the person that was tossing up dates from a palm tree? Also, he said, give me two. He said to her, if I give it to you, you can Kurdish me. Amalei, you say, throw. Throw means nothing as well. So three different cases saying the same thing. Taser already says each one is a little bit different. One is to do with food, one is to do with drink, and one is to do with other matters. Tell you in all these cases, if you repeat, double up, and just saying it to please him, it doesn't mean it. He didn't say twice, but once. If he says it, he says, give me. Not give, but give me the drink and so on. What happens then? Ravina Mekadesh. You hear an argument. Ravina says Mekadeshes. That's talking about Aksam Tana the Malk. I swear in the crown of the king. Ain't Mekadeshes. Now the Gemara will sum up a bunch of halachas. Hilchasa ain't Mekadeshes. She's not Mekudesh. The Hilchasa Shiroi Loy Tzicha Shuma. The halacha is that silk does not need an assessment. The Hilchasa Karabba Lazar. Allah if you say he's catching you if it's $100, you give him $1, she's Mekudesh, you hold the 99. Not like the Braisa. The Hilchas Gerava Amrav Nachman. The halacha is like Rabbi says in Nachman that mana ain't kan mashkin ain't kan. If you say I owe you $100 and here's the mashkin, it's nothing. Fascinating the sugi here of Shiroi Loi Tzicha Shuvah. There's a fascinating Rabbi Tam. He learned shot over here. Why don't we just say Hilchas Gerava? Why say Hilchas Shiroi? He wants to say like this. That there's a difference between silk and other things because silk is something that generally people have an idea what the value is, especially women. They buy clothes, they have an idea what the value is. So the halach is that we don't need to assess it. But he says when it comes to things that people are not really aware of the true value is, even halacha, you're not allowed to use it. We don't want to say because you think it works in all places. It does not work in all cases. And Taisha says, this is the basis for the custom that by a chuppah we do not use a diamond ring. Because when it comes to a diamond ring, most people have no clue of what the value of the diamond is. Some people might think it's worth more than it is. Some people might think it's worth less than it is. Now that you have lab diamonds, you can't even tell. Who knows what what kind of diamond you're getting. So it says, based on this, we use a simple ring. We remove the stone, he said, but we use a simple ring for a chuppah so that there's no issues whatever. It's just worth a pruta, and you don't have to assess it, and that's good enough. That's why the Rabbanim ask is the worth of pruta, and we want it as simple as possible, clean. And some say nothing should even be written on it, so it has zero value whatsoever. Zero, just pruta, and that's it. And there's no shaila.